So, hello everyone, and welcome to Architect of Things. You're in the episode Architects in the Age of Godlike Tools, Reclaiming Trust, Practice, and Professionalism Across Generations. So, welcome. And Architect of Things inspiration comes from the traditional architecture field that is historically performed on physical reality and now converges with intersectionalities that contribute to enabling the Architect of Things. You can follow highlights from this discussion at the website architectofthings.liraluis.com. So, my name is Lyra, and I'm an American architect for open-minded business owners looking to create spaces that work. I'm also a triple fellow, fellow of the Royal Institute of British Architects, fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, and fellow of Frank Lloyd Wright's Taliesin Fellowship, having graduated with a Master of Architecture degree at the Frank Lloyd Wright School of Architecture. I currently serve as the RSA counselor in the US, having been elected by RSA fellows, which include Nobel laureates and Pritzker Architecture Prize laureates alike. Today, I'm honored to be speaking with Chris Williamson, RIBA, the newly elected president of the Royal Institute of British Architects, also known as RIBA. So RIBA is one of the historic and influential institutes for architects founded in 1834. He will begin his two-year term on September 1st, 2025 until September 2027. Chris is not only an award-winning architect, but also a leader in transportation and infrastructure projects across the UK and internationally. He spent more than 40 years in practice, 35 of those focused on designing better public transportation systems to help people leave their cars behind in favor of walking, biking, and riding safe, efficient transit. As co-founder of Weston Williamson and Partners, Chris has led major projects for High Speed 2, Crossrail, London Underground, Network Rail, Dubai Transport Authority, and many more. His expertise is in shaping future-ready, people-first cities, has made him a global voice in sustainable planning, urban planning. But beyond the big infrastructure, Chris is also deeply caring about community and culture. He recently restored a derelict church in Derbyshire and turned it into a thriving community arts center. That speaks volumes about the kind of leadership he brings: visionary, grounded, and community driven. He's also served in a wide range of public roles, from RIBA counselor to ambassador, including international vice president, and brings a passion for reforming architectural education, restoring professional trust, and modernizing the ways architects learn, work, and lead. So today's conversation isn't just about architecture, it's about where the profession goes from here. We'll talk about digital disruption, rebuilding trust, and how architecture can keep its soul in an age of fast-moving technology and social change. So Chris, thank you for being here, and let's get started. Let's dive into some important questions about technology, trust, and the role of architects in today's fast-changing world. So question number one, you've talked about updating how architects learn throughout their careers. But these days, being good at using software, specifically BIM software, or posting beautiful buildings online, rendered either manual rendering or the digital Photoshop rendering or even AI, can be mistaken for truly knowing how to design, build, or understand how buildings come together. How will RIBA or RIBA help people tell the difference between someone who knows the tools and someone who understands how to make safe, lasting, and thoughtful buildings?
Oh, wow, that's a huge question. But I'm not sure that it's changed very much in 500 years or more. You know, when Brunelleschi was trying to convince the people of Florence that he knew how to do the dome in Florence, you know, you still have to convince your client. You still have to, you can have the knowledge, but you've got to be able to put that over to the client. So I think whether we sketch, and the architectural profession has changed such a lot in the time, the 40 years that I've been in it, and the rate of change, you're right, is enormous. But I don't think the fundamental principles change very much. And as people, we don't change very much. The technology has changed the way that we work, and changed the way that we make decisions and will increasingly inform those. But at the end of the day, I think what's great about architectural education is teaching people or helping people to think and work out problems. And AI and other tools will help that, but it's not the only solution. And what fascinates me about the profession is the variety and everybody's passion about their own type of architecture, whether it's conservation or heritage or you know computer aided design. Everybody's passionate about their own aspect of it. And as president of the RIBA, my function is to try and pull all those elements together because the very thing that makes us specialists can also lead us to be a bit isolationist and not appreciate other people's views. So I think you need to have an all-rounded approach and to be able to work for the whole profession, not just part of it. So I think you're right about the rate of change, but there are some architects that are sort of resisting the rise of AI, and that there will probably be a place for them in the future. But then there are people that are at the forefront of AI and pushing it all the time. And the rate of improvement is actually fascinating. And the threats to the profession are at the one time very exciting, but very real as well. I mean, every guy on the street, every woman on the street, if they can use a computer in the future, they will be able to be an architect and will be able to design their own house, their own kitchen extension, their own office, their own interior. So it is quite worrying. But we, as architects, we have to be as we are in any profession, whether you're an actor, a film writer, a musician, you have to try and stay ahead of the game and do something that uh, the technology can't yet do. So I think it's a very exciting time. And whenever I go to schools of architecture, I wish I was a student again because it is a fascinating time to be starting your career in architecture as well as, in my case, coming to the end of it.
Right. And you did mention earlier Brunelleschi and the Florence, the dome in Florence. What do you think? And it's still existing there, and we still learn from it. Even the younger architects still go there to learn from that structure. What do you think are the most essential qualities or skills that can't be replaced by software?
Well, I think I mean, I mean, history has a from what I know of Brunelleschi, he had an idea of how you could do that project, and he was able to convince the client, whereas other great architects, including Da Vinci, great artists, great engineers, weren't able to do. So he was able to demonstrate, and so I think it's the same. He used different tools to convince the client that he had the solutions. And I know th those structures at the time, whether it was, 100 years later to 150 years later, St. Paul's Cathedral, or in the middle, St. Peter's in Rome, which Michelangelo did, they were all incredibly innovative. And yes, some of them fell down and they had to start again. But that still happens today, despite all the computers. We have bridges that fail and structures that fail. So it's not foolproof. So it's about knowing your understanding structure and working it out is still the same, despite the complex tools we now have.
We now have. And then a lot of younger architects and students, you mentioned we still learn from these, whether they're successes or failures. And students don't feel that architects institutes speak to them anymore. That may be because the profession hasn't really kept up with how people communicate and work today, especially online. Because, well, back then in Brunelleschi's time, there was no online. Everything was like direct communication in person, face to face. But that's slightly different in today's time. So, what's your plan to make RIBA more meaningful to a new generation who live in a digital world and expect more flexibility, diversity, and transparency from their institutes?
I think again, it's a gradual progression. I think um, professional institutes, you're right. Whether you're a scientist, whether you're a designer, whether you're an engineer, whether you're an artist, your professional institute, which were generally, in our case in England, were formed in the Victorian time as learned societies to exchange ideas. And in Renaissance times, they still had the Medicis, and they all had places where you could go and exchange ideas. And that was the great thing about the Renaissance, was about people started to exchange ideas again and talk to each other and learn from each other, and learn from other civilizations, new discoveries, new travel. So it is a continuum. But you're right, professional institutes aren't as relevant to young people now, because when I was a young architect, the RIBA was incredibly influential to me. It started my career by being chosen for an exhibition at the RIBA building. But it was the source of all the best lectures, all the best talks, all the best competitions, awards. It had an annual conference. It had all these things. So for me, it was a sort of a go-to organization which you had to join because you believed in its values. I think these days there are so many other outlets. There are online magazines, online competitions and awards, and there are so many people doing so many different things. It's hard to compete with them. But I think we should be collaborating with them and be a resource for all of those things. And the great thing is, from my previous work at the RIBA, that every institute around the world wants to collaborate with us because they see us as having a specialism in things like lifelong learning. So I think actually the opportunities are fantastic to help and work alongside other countries to develop their online learning, and we can learn from them as well. So I think the interest in architecture and the built environment is better than it's ever been, and there's more interest in it. People really love the kind of work that we do and the variety of it. So I know, and school children love coming into our office and learning about architecture. They love the models, they love the drawings. But in the same way, when I was a kid at school, working class kids aren't encouraged to go into what's seen as a profession. So I think there's a lot we can do to get more people interested in what we do. So I think it's a very exciting time. What I want to do is to ensure that the RIBA is still around in 20, 50, 100 years' time, so that it'll help young architects and young students and school children get them interested in the environment. Because personally, I think you know, it is a vocation. It does, we genuinely do uplift people's mental and physical well-being and spiritual well-being as well. I don't think that's as appreciated as it should be by politicians and decision makers, just how important architecture and the environment is. And I think we have to put that message better to decision makers to ensure that we are appreciated in the work that we do. I think obviously we've made mistakes in the past, and post-war, some of the construction techniques and some of the designs which everybody, not just architects, thought were the way to go, have now been proved to be slightly not as good as they probably could have been. But when you look back at the old footage of people moving into high-rise developments and concrete construction uh, uh, housing, everybody thought that was a good idea at the time because there was such a belief in technology, a belief in a new way of living, and that hasn't proved to be as successful as it we all probably thought it was going to be. So I think, I mean, I was 12 years old when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, and as a young kid, that belief in technology and how did if we can do that, we can do anything. I think now there's more of an emphasis to think, right, we've got all this technology, but let's not use it unless it's actually making things better. I think just because we've got the technology doesn't mean to say we should use it unless it's going to make our cities greener, more beautiful, more pleasant to be in, quieter, and more walkable, a better environment. Then let's not use the technology just because it's there. Because as a race, we haven't changed much. Our physical and our mental capacity to change hasn't changed as much as the technology has around us. So I think we need to be mindful of why we're using technology.
Yes. And one of the things that is demonstrated in your work is collaboration. So today, most building projects involve many people working together offline and online. But with so many hands in the mix, it's sometimes unclear who actually made what. So credit gets lost, or it can get lost, and work can be misrepresented. So how do you plan to update the code of conduct or code of ethics that protect fairness and authorship, especially when projects are shared digitally and copied so is easily?
Um, I think, yeah, architects aren't generally well. I mean, I personally, I love collaborating with other architects and with other engineers. I mean, the for me, the work isn't just about the final design or the design process. It's about how you treat people in the team and how you I've had more enjoyment mentoring young people than I have the projects that I've worked on. And the process of producing architecture to me is as important as the final result. But architects can be a bit arrogant. They can take all the credit when something goes right and not give the credit out enough, when things work out brilliantly. But they're the first to blame the engineer if something goes wrong. And it's the same with the credit. We don't, and also all the awards are great at acknowledging the designer. But often there's an architect who will make the building work, do all the working drawings, and a lot of architects don't necessarily do all the work in drawings, but they are equally important to getting a successful project. So I don't know how
Yeah,
you
go
change that. It's probably in human nature, but I'd certainly like to see more credit given to the people that make the building work and not just come up with the idea. The ideas are important, they're vital, and that's what we're brilliant at. But in the annual survey, almost every year, the clients say we have fantastic design skills and they're very happy with the design skills, but they're not so happy with our management skills or our ability to um, make the project happen. And in our world, it's an equally vital skill. I mean, Christo, the artist, says that the process is as important as the art. It's part of the art. And when he's doing his running fence or wrapping the Reichstag or the islands, the permissions and the working through the problems in order to get the project done are just as important, if not more important, than the original idea.
Yes, yes. And you mentioned, an interesting point about the way architects would handle credit. I think my encounter was that I looked to Grafton Architects, who was the RIBA gold medal recipients and the Pritzker Architecture Prize laureates as well, as a model for how to give credit to the people you work with because they have that spirit of generosity. They, as I've learned about their work, that even everybody gets credit, even down to the people who we would consider have very light touch on working on the project, but they do have that spirit of generosity where they give credit even to those people. So I think as role models, I think for younger architects, Grafton Architects really set the bar high on how to give proper credit.
Yeah,
So just one example.
they took us round one of their buildings in Dublin in the spring, and yeah, any good project doesn't rely on just a good architect. It has to have a good client to start it off, and the planners, the engineers, the builders, the contractor team. Throughout history, it's been a team effort. Christopher Wren gets all the plaudits for St. Paul's, but there are hundreds of craftsmen, and the city, the decision makers. Those projects are wonderful because of the team, not because of the individual.
Absolutely. And we now use powerful software, including artificial intelligence, as you mentioned earlier, that help design buildings faster and more efficiently. But sometimes this speed means people skip over important considerations, like how the building impacts the environment or the community. How will RIBA, do you think, make sure that architects don't just become software operators or AI creators, but remain thoughtful leaders who put people and planet first?
I don't think the fundamentals of architecture will change, and I don't think, I was a student in the 70s, and the the oil crisis in the mid 70s, Andrew and I formed our practice on the basis of sustainability because in the 70s, probably in the 60s, I mean Marvin Gaye was singing about it in 1970 about the planet and about so I don't think the fundamental concerns will change. I think we have greater tools. My problem with some of the tools are that they make something look fantastic. And some of the designs I see, particularly for projects in the Middle East, look incredible, but you can analyze them. You can't build them. You can't build a 20-meter long cantilever. You can't have some of the images that are shown to clients that win projects where you just have sheer glass walls with nothing supporting the roof. You know that once the structure is added, it's not going to look like that. So I think there's always you can just because you can draw something doesn't mean to say you can build it. And I think we have to be that's what we're good at. And I'm thinking AI is learning all the time and it gets better and better and it doesn't sleep and it's learning 24 hours a day from every other program that it's looking at in the world. So it is an amazing tool, and it will get better. But I think we have that empathy, we have that ability to add something else, which at the moment the tools don't. But I mean, maybe they will learn, and they're learning very quickly. So um, it is, but it is a fantastic opportunity, and I think the world seems to be split into people that. I mean, I organised a lecture earlier on this year with Professor Stuart Russell and Neil Leach, and just when I set the lecture up, which was about 2, 3 years ago, to get them both over here, AI was sort of in the dim and distant future, but almost as soon as I set it up, it's now everywhere, and it's
Right.
all it is incredible the influence on lots of different industries, not just construction. And we can try and ignore it, but we won't be able to ignore it. Um, it's going to have a profound impact.
Yes. And one of the things that AI has not really delved into is archives, like how would they treat the archives? But the RIBA has amazing archives, drawings, talks, and knowledge built over centuries. But in today's world of viral videos or animations and flashy online images, deeper thinking often gets ignored. So even the AI has not been taught yet that with that kind of deep thinking. How can RIBA use its cultural history and resources to promote better conversations about architecture, not just what looks good, but what works well and serves society?
Oh, we do. We have the most amazing cultural collection, the best architectural resource in the world, and Palladio drawings, and most of the major architects from all parts of the world. We own a lot of their original work, and I've used it a lot, uh, both at my time as a student and on projects. It's amazing what you can find, what resources there are. How there's too much to digitize, although it's something we are doing. But the fantastic thing about the program that we have to digitize the collection is that it will be available for everyone, not just people that come to the UK to look at it. So I think that, and that's what I'm particularly interested in, is sharing that knowledge, because the challenges we have are global challenges, and we can't be insular any longer. We have to,
Right.
the rate of urbanization and the rate of climate change is speeding up, and we have to share that knowledge to ensure that people around the world have access to that sort of information and learn from each other. So I think it is there'll always be a lot of people that want to delve more into the detail, and that's where academics and researchers excel. But just to get the information across to a wider number of people, that's what the RIBA are spending their money on at the moment, to have it as a global resource.
And also, I've recently used the Google Arts. I believe the RIBA has a collaboration with Google Arts as well, which spreads that information in across not just architects but everyone else, like lay people. So my
Yeah.
final question is about navigating the digital Wild West. So, protecting truth and trust in architecture. So, Nobel Peace Prize laureate Maria Reza's book, which I recently read, How to Stand Up to a Dictator, powerfully illustrates how digital platforms can be weaponized to distort truth and erode trust, not only in journalism, but in any industry as well. So we're seeing similar tactics emerge in online architectural communities where misinformation, fake profiles or burner accounts, and online harassment threaten to undermine the integrity of our profession. How do you believe Architects Institutes can effectively address this growing challenge? What concrete steps can we take to adopt our standards of professional conduct or code of ethics to safeguard both professionals and the public, ensuring that truth, fairness, and trust remain foundational to architectural practice both online and offline?
That's a huge question, but I think, I mean, one of the worrying things is about the amazing technology we have in our pockets and at our fingertips. I always assumed growing up as a child and looking at all the technological innovations that it would make us cleverer, but it's not. It's actually making us more stupid because and in fact Professor Russell was the person that explained this to me, and I hadn't, I hadn't really thought about it much at the time, but because your phone, your Instagram or WhatsApp or whatever X wants us to keep scrolling and go deeper and deeper and spend more time on the app, that it's always nudging us to be more and more extreme, always to keep us interested. And that goes whether you're on the left of the political spectrum or the right of the political spectrum. It won't guide you towards the middle because there isn't a consensus there. It'll drive you to be more extreme. So it's always it's always guiding you, and that's what's making the world. I think it's contributing to the world being a bit more polarized, and people not thinking for themselves. And in a way, it's always been the same. It's always been the newspapers that you read, whether it's the Daily Mail or the Telegraph or the Guardian or the Mirror. They've always done that. We want to have our own views reinforced a lot of the time, but at least those were more conscious choices, and now the choices that we're making are more insidious, and they're not. We're less aware of them, so we take them as gospel when we should be taking them and doubting them. And I think that's what frustrates me in particular as an architect with the training that I've had. The training I've had has always led me to question things as an architect and come up with different solutions, different ways of looking at things and trying to understand, not just pandering to your client. The thing that got me interested in architecture in the first place was it was seemed to be more like a vicar, more like a religious leader, was where you had to act for the greater good of society, not just the person that was paying your bills. So that's why we have a more rounded education to be able to see different sides of the argument, not just do what you're told to do. But I think but AI and technology isn't working in the same way, which is a bit worrying. But
Yes.
so I think 'cause architects don't have all the answers by any means, but I think we have a few of them. And but the very thing that makes us come up with different solutions can hold us back. We're not as forceful as we probably should be, and we've kind of we don't lead or we don't debate with politicians and decision makers and influence them as much as we should do. So I think we need to get a bit more active and a bit more energy and enthusiasm to put our case across to make the environment a better, the world a better place.
Yes, absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you. Thank you for the insights you've shared with the Architect of Things. Thank you for this conversation. Architecture is more than just buildings, as I said earlier. It's about trust, responsibility, and creating spaces that shape how we live. As technology and culture shift, the institutes behind architecture must also evolve. I hope this episode sparks more curiosity and more conversations about how we can build a better future together. And Chris, I look forward to your leadership. You have some exciting objectives and visions for the RIBA, and I look forward to supporting whatever I can that aligns with similar values. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nice talking to you. Thank you.